When my marriage to Steve fell apart and the public's version of my fairy tale kind of went into crisis, I did a series of movies that got badly reviewed, and although some of them made a ton of money, my kind of fairy dust started falling off.
Ali MacGraw was once hailed as the most beautiful woman in the world, a timeless face of Hollywood romance. Steve McQueen, the king of cool, embodied America's ultimate rebel spirit. Together, their relationship seemed like a fairy tale that captivated headlines everywhere.
As a woman is almost the most important thing we ever do. They're just dazzling to me. And it's really important. It's a major accomplishment.
But away from the spotlight, their fiery passion unraveled into something darker. Now, at 85, MacGraw reveals McQueen's control, isolation, and the torment she endured in silence. High stakes and the ultimate sacrifice. The year was 1970, and the world was falling in love with Ali MacGraw. Before the whirlwind of Steve McQueen, she was remarkable on her own terms. She wasn't like the other perfectly polished movie stars of the time. Ali had a unique, natural glamour, a look defined by her intelligence, long dark hair, and a simple yet sophisticated style. It was the complete opposite of the manufactured Hollywood image, and America couldn't get enough of it. Her career took off like a rocket. Following her breakthrough in Goodbye, Columbus, she became a global sensation with the film Love Story in 1970. She was nominated for an Oscar and instantly became one of the biggest box office draws in the world, the embodiment of the era's tragic but beautiful romance. She had also married Paramount's legendary studio head, Robert Evans, which placed her at the very center of Hollywood's power structure. In this moment, Ali seemed to have it all: fame, influence, and the freedom to shape her destiny at the peak of her creative power. Then came Texas and the set of the 1972 action film, The Getaway. Her co-star was Steve McQueen, known to the world simply as the King of Cool. He was a cinematic legend whose rebellious intensity and brooding persona were intoxicating. When Ali and Steve met, she felt a spark that was instant and overwhelming. She would later describe their attraction using a single telling word: chemical. It was a force that immediately overwhelmed reality and ignored the massive consequences waiting for them both. What followed was a dramatic, very public affair, one of the most sensational Hollywood scandals of the decade. Ali threw herself completely into the relationship, risking everything: her marriage to Evans, her career security, and her reputation to be with McQueen. It was an all-consuming fire that led to their marriage in 1973. This was no casual fling. It was a total commitment based on the most intense, consuming passion either star had ever known. The media went wild. They were the ultimate power couple. Two beautiful forces combining sophisticated style with raw, anti-establishment cool. But the dazzling public image concealed a darker truth. Even in those intoxicating early days, Ali sensed the turbulence beneath the surface of the King of Cool. She believed her love might calm the restless, rebellious spirit of the man she married. Instead, that passion would prove dangerously volatile. The man who captured Ali MacGraw's heart was no ordinary star. He was a legend, haunted by deep childhood wounds, carrying shadows she had yet to face. Shadows that would slowly tighten around her, transforming a passionate romance into invisible chains of control and fear. Steve McQueen was born in 1930, and his life started with immediate instability. His father, who worked as a circus stuntman, left the family before Steve was even 6 months old. His mother, battling addiction, was unable to provide a steady home. His childhood became a cycle of constant moves between relatives. He spent some time with an uncle on a farm in Missouri before being returned to his mother in Los Angeles, where she brought a series of abusive stepfathers into the home. The defining moment of his youth came when he was sent to the Boys Republic Reform School near Chino, California. This 14-month period, spent with other troubled kids, didn't fix him. Instead, it solidified his anti-establishment attitude. The iconic rebel persona that made him famous was, in truth, a shell he built to protect himself, a personality rooted in unresolved anger and a profound inability to trust anyone. That tough, detached, and cool image he projected on screen for films like Bullet wasn't just acting, it was a psychological defense mechanism he developed to survive. McQueen took all his internal rage and turmoil and channeled it right into his performances. He became famous because he seemed authentic, and he was authentic, just true to his own deep-rooted pain. Because his childhood was so utterly chaotic, McQueen developed an intense and almost obsessive need to control everything around him. His movies, his car collection, and most disastrously, the women who entered his private world. Adding to the volatility was his persistent substance abuse. His success in Hollywood ran parallel to his heavy use of harmful substances and alcohol. For McQueen, this wasn't fun. It was self-medication for the internal pain he refused to address. This habit only served to increase his paranoia and his mood swings, making life with him utterly unpredictable. This destructive pattern was already well established by the time Ali met him. This was, after all, McQueen's second marriage. His first wife, Neil Adams, has since written about the same heartbreaking cycle. Constant infidelity, crippling paranoia, and both physical and emotional abuse. When Ali committed to McQueen, she wasn't starting fresh. She was walking straight into a toxic cycle. She desperately hoped her love and dedication could somehow fix the famous rebel and provide him with the stability he never had. What she didn't realize yet was that she was facing wounds too deep for love alone to repair. The clash was quick and inevitable. Ali MacGraw was an independent, successful, modern woman who had earned her fame and her status. Steve McQueen, however, harbored a deep-seated, traditional, and totally controlling view of what a wife should be. A subservient caretaker, not a competing star. The stage was set, with two global stars locked in an intensely passionate but deeply dysfunctional union. That intense chemistry quickly turned sour. The control McQueen desperately sought to impose would first target the one thing Ali held most dear: her identity and her dazzling career. The passion that consumed Ali MacGraw and Steve McQueen was, for him, a means to an end. Once Ali had made the commitment, the external pressures of a Hollywood career were quickly replaced by the suffocating demands of her new husband. She thought she was running away to find passion, but she was really walking into a kind of cage. The first immediate demand McQueen made was non-negotiable. Ali had to quit Hollywood. Driven by his own deep insecurities and a very traditional, old-school mindset, McQueen didn't want a competing superstar for a wife. He wanted a homemaker, a woman entirely dedicated to him and their home life. Ali MacGraw, blinded by her intense love and genuinely believing she could fulfill this role for the man she was obsessed with, made a life-altering decision. At the absolute peak of her fame in 1973, she walked away from acting. This move absolutely stunned Hollywood and drastically altered the trajectory of her professional life. The cost was massive and immediate. By quitting, Ali wasn't just turning down small parts, she was abandoning her standing as one of the world's most sought-after actresses. Consider the enormous roles she famously passed on, or was prevented from taking because of McQueen's controlling nature. She could have starred as Daisy in The Great Gatsby, or as Evelyn Mulwray in the classic Chinatown. These were iconic roles that went on to define other actresses' careers. By giving up that work, Ali was sacrificing her creative voice and the massive earning potential that came with it. McQueen then orchestrated their withdrawal from the Hollywood machine entirely. They moved away to a secluded, isolated life, often on a remote ranch or property. This wasn't about privacy, but it was purely McQueen's attempt to control their environment and limit any external influences on Ali. He didn't want the outside world reminding her of the success and independence she had left behind. Life with him became less about romance and more about conformity. Ali felt intense pressure to adopt his preferred style, spending her time supporting his all-consuming passions for racing and motorbikes. Her own intellectual interests, her taste for art and culture, and her professional achievements were slowly devalued. The psychological effect on Ali was devastating. Her self-worth, which she had earned through hard work and professional triumphs, started to disappear under the constant, unrelenting pressure to be nothing more than Mrs. Steve McQueen. Her identity was slowly being erased. The disparity in their lives grew wider every day. While Ali's career was shelved, McQueen was totally free to pursue his own professional life and passion projects. He starred in huge hits like Papillon and The Towering Inferno. He was still the king of cool, while she was simply the woman waiting at home. To cement his control, McQueen also insisted that Ali sign a prenuptial agreement. She signed it, caught up in the romance and believing in their future. In the context of her immense career sacrifice, that document was a cruel mechanism that would later leave her financially exposed and vulnerable, being a clear piece of evidence showing his obsessive need for total control over her life, her money, and her future. The seclusion they sought did not calm McQueen's internal demons. In fact, it had the opposite effect. It simply concentrated his deep-seated paranoia, his mood swings, and his simmering volatility entirely onto Ali. The quiet life they sought became a pressure cooker, setting the stage for the direct, heartbreaking abuse that would define the next chapter of their marriage. With her career gone and her support system stripped away, Ali found herself wholly dependent on a man whose simmering rage was a ticking time bomb. In their forced seclusion, the stage was set for infidelity, addiction, and violence to consume their private world. The horrors of the cage. The world saw a glamorous Hollywood marriage defined by passion, but behind the locked doors of their secluded homes, that intense chemistry quickly turned into a devastating, toxic cycle. The atmosphere in their home was immediately poisoned by Steve McQueen's chronic, unapologetic infidelity. This created a cruel, unbelievable irony. McQueen demanded absolute fidelity, total attention, and a rigid domestic life from Ali while he engaged in constant, blatant affairs. These were often not even hidden. Instead, they were simply flaunted, a fact that made the betrayal more disrespectful. This was more than simple cheating. It was a devastating tool of emotional abuse designed to totally tear down Ali's self-esteem and confidence. His paranoia and possessiveness, often fueled by his substance use, turned their life into a non-stop cycle of accusations and interrogations. Ali was constantly made to feel insecure and questioned, creating an environment where she could never feel safe or trusted. Meanwhile, McQueen's grip on addiction became tighter and more destructive. His reliance on substances, including alcohol and substances, worsened dramatically throughout their marriage. This, in turn, escalated his volatility and his capacity for anger. The domestic instability was intense. They would have days of intense charm and sincere remorse from Steve, which would then be followed by sudden, unpredictable rages, long disappearances, or periods of cold, silent neglect that Ali has described as crippling. She became a constant witness to this decline, always hoping that the man who sometimes reappeared, the charming one, could be permanent. She clung desperately to the belief that her love and commitment could somehow save him from his self-destruction, rationalizing his terrible behavior as a symptom of his disease. Then came the transition from emotional pain to physical violence. The true horrors, the years of emotional degradation, the constant verbal absolutely, and the unrelenting need for total control eventually crossed a critical line. The psychological torture became physical. Ali MacGraw has spoken candidly about the fear she lived with. While it is vital not to sensationalize these accounts, we must state them clearly. There were moments of physical violence. This abuse emphasized the total loss of her personal safety and sovereignty within her own marriage. The situation was further compounded by the culture of the 1970s celebrity world, where domestic issues were almost always hidden, and the victim, often the woman, was pressured to keep the perfect, smiling public image intact. The final shattering loss that broke the relationship occurred with an event that was devastatingly personal. Ali MacGraw suffered a miscarriage. This was a critical turning point that tore the last remaining shreds of the illusion away. What Ali needed in that moment of profound sadness was comfort and compassion. What she received was McQueen's shocking, cold, and totally detached response. He was incapable of offering genuine empathy or support when she needed it most, prioritizing his own emotional distance over her devastating personal loss. For Ali, this was the ultimate betrayal. She realized that the man she had sacrificed her entire identity, status, and career for was fundamentally broken and incapable of giving her the care, safety, or empathy she deserved. That moment of cold indifference solidified a painful truth, giving her the clarity and the courage she finally needed to acknowledge the complete impossibility of the relationship. The coldness of that moment solidified a painful truth. Ali MacGraw had to choose between survival and the man she loved. The desperate act of escaping the marriage would lead to a bitter, costly divorce and the start of a difficult, lonely journey toward rebuilding her life. The night Ali MacGraw realized the man she loved was permanently beyond saving, the intense chemical passion finally died. It took incredible courage to actually walk away from the world's most famous movie star. But the price of that freedom, both professional and financial, was only beginning to be tallied. Her decision to escape was not sudden, but the result of a slow, crushing realization. The continuous abuse, the constant humiliation of his infidelity, and most importantly, the cold response to her miscarriage provided the final and painful clarity. Ali knew she had to save herself. There was simply no other way out of the toxic cycle that had stripped her of her identity and peace. The formal separation occurred in 1977. This was an ultimate act of self-preservation, a desperate break from a relationship that had become a prison. She chose survival over the continued allure of the toxic legend. However, freedom came with a devastating financial trap. The cruel weight of the prenuptial agreement McQueen had insisted she sign years before. At the time, she was blindly in love and completely naive to the legal realities. Now, that document became a harsh mechanism of her continued vulnerability. The reality was brutal. Ali had sacrificed her career at its absolute peak for 5 years, yet she was now divorced from one of the world's richest and highest-paid actors with virtually no financial recourse or ongoing support. She went from being Hollywood royalty, commanding massive salaries, to struggling almost overnight to make ends meet. Looking back years later, Ali MacGraw was candid and self-critical, reflecting that she was stupid not to have secured her future. She realized that her romantic, idealistic view of divorce had been absolutely destroyed by the financial sting of her separation from McQueen. Compounding her financial hardship was the harsh reality of Hollywood's rejection. When Ali attempted to pick up the threads of her career, she faced a massive negative impact. Hollywood studios and producers often viewed her through the lens of her difficult marriage, seeing her as damaged goods, high maintenance, or simply an actress who had been out of the game for too long. The 5-year career gap was insurmountable. The incredible momentum she had built from Love Story and The Getaway was completely gone, and the new era of filmmaking had little room for a star who had been so publicly defined and overshadowed by her powerful ex-husband. She was forced to take whatever work came her way. Her first post-McQueen movie, the action film Convoy in 1978, was a modest box office success. Yet, it was miles away from the critically acclaimed star-making roles she had commanded just a decade earlier. This early struggle underscored exactly how difficult it would be to ever recapture the lost glory of her professional life. Ali MacGraw had won her freedom, but she had lost everything else: her career, her financial security, and perhaps most painfully, her self-esteem. The external battle was over, but the internal war against dependency, trauma, and a creeping addiction was about to begin. The long road back. The wreckage of her marriage to Steve McQueen left Ali MacGraw standing alone on the ashes of her career. isolated, and financially drained. She had fought and won her physical freedom, but the most insidious wound was a psychological one, a dependency on chaos and a quiet, crushing addiction that she would have to face completely alone. The 1980s were a period of difficult, often humiliating, attempts to restart a career that had stalled at its height. Ali quickly learned that Hollywood wasn't forgiving. The massive professional momentum she once had was gone, and the critics were ready to pounce. She tried to regain her footing and, more importantly, make money. Her most famous and often ridiculed attempt was her stint on the popular primetime soap opera Dynasty as the character Lady Ashley Mitchell. She also took roles in major productions like the miniseries The Winds of War. The harsh reality was that Hollywood considered her a lackluster actress whose time had passed, and the critics' verdict was brutal. Her performances were often heavily slated, confirming the loss of her professional magic. This wasn't an artistic choice. It was pure financial necessity, a direct and painful consequence of the prenuptial agreement and the 5-year career sacrifice she made for McQueen. She was now forced to chase work that was beneath her talent and status simply to pay her bills. Underneath the desperation to find work, a silent killer was taking hold. The constant stress of the toxic marriage, the gnawing loneliness of her isolation, and the public, devastating loss of her career were all being self-medicated. She developed a profound, unacknowledged alcohol dependency. Ali has since been incredibly honest about this dark period, admitting that her addiction to alcohol was intertwined with a deeper male dependency. She was still desperately searching for a person or a substance to fill the vast void left by McQueen and the total erosion of her self-worth. The sheer difficulty of being the single mother of her son, combined with the professional failure and the persistent emotional trauma, brought her to a true nadir. The life she had been forced into, the barefoot and pregnant lifestyle McQueen demanded, had not only destroyed her career, but had fundamentally undermined her entire sense of self, leaving her vulnerable to addiction. She was trapped in a cycle of unhealthy choices. The turning point finally arrived in 1986. A concerned friend, recognizing the severity of her struggle, persuaded her to seek help. This led to the crucial moment of salvation at the Betty Ford Clinic. Ali's initial reaction was deep denial. She entered the clinic believing she just needed a tune-up, convinced her issues were external, not internal. Her denial was swiftly shattered. During her 30-day stay, she faced the life-changing realization that she was a chronic alcoholic battling a life-threatening dependency. That month at Betty Ford became the beginning of her true life. It was here, forced into total sobriety and intense self-reflection, that she finally began the honest work of dismantling the emotional trauma and dependency forged first by her chaotic early fame and then, catastrophically, by the McQueen marriage. She started to understand her need to escape reality through alcohol and through codependent, intense relationships. It was a painful but necessary period of spiritual and psychological rebuilding. Once she achieved sustained sobriety and emotional health, Ali made a brave and definitive choice in the 1990s. She was going to permanently walk away from the Hollywood spotlight and its toxic culture. She chose to leave the entire industry that had nearly destroyed her. Her new sanctuary became Santa Fe, New Mexico. The move was a complete and total rejection of the high-glamour, high-drama life that had proven so poisonous. In Santa Fe, she dedicated herself to finding a new path and new pursuits that aligned with her recovered self. She focused on new, fulfilling work that reflected her true, evolved values. This included writing her candid and well-received autobiography, Moving Pictures, which shared her deepest struggles with the world. She also embraced her passions for interior design and, most importantly, animal rights and activism. In the quiet, dusty calm of the high desert, Ali MacGraw finally built a life based on authenticity, purpose, and peace, rather than fame and chemical volatility. The internal war was won in the quiet of Santa Fe, but the memory of Steve McQueen, a man dead for over 40 years, still casts a shadow. It is in her later years that Ali MacGraw finally achieved the perspective to speak frankly about the man, the monster, and the heartfelt lessons of their shared chemical chaos. The passing of decades brings a rare and incredibly valuable clarity. The young woman who sacrificed everything for the King of Cool is gone, replaced by an 85-year-old who has done the hard, necessary work of recovery. From the sanctuary of Santa Fe, Ali MacGraw is finally ready to speak the unvarnished truth about the cost of that obsession. The sheer volume of her recent reflections, shared with the wisdom of her age and sobriety, is striking. She often revisits the initial attraction, describing her relationship with Steve McQueen as instantly, overwhelmingly chemical. Today, however, that word carries a deeper meaning. She now clarifies that the chemical connection wasn't simply passionate. She understands it was volatile, unstable, and dangerous, a merging of two addicted and damaged souls. Her deepest regret is summarized in a single poignant quote: "I wish we had both grown old sober." This isn't anger speaking, it's a moment of sadness for the wasted potential and the peaceful life they might have shared without the constant, chaotic interference of addiction. She speaks with the authority of a survivor, admitting that she even recognized the danger and the bad boy element from the start. This demonstrates that the trauma she endured wasn't entirely a surprise. It was a risk she tragically took, betting her life on the hope of taming a force of nature. For years, Ali had to live with the public's image of her ex-husband. She faced the difficulty of reconciling the beloved King of Cool, the man on the movie posters, with the abusive man she knew behind closed doors. She acknowledges both sides, the incredible charm and the destructive cruelty, but her survival gives her the ultimate authority to define the reality of their marriage. At the core of the horror, as she sees it now, was the systematic dismantling of her identity. She frequently recounts the trauma of control that McQueen orchestrated by demanding she quit her career. That sacrifice was more than professional. It was a psychological attack on her self-worth. It was a clear effort to make her dependent, and she understands that today with sharp precision. Despite the intensity of the abuse, her recovery journey led her to a place of acceptance. She details her struggle toward self-forgiveness for the mistakes she made and the choices that left her vulnerable. She holds no bitterness toward McQueen, only sadness for the fundamentally damaged individual he was. Her peace today is proof that she chose to process the pain rather than carry the resentment. We must remember the end of Steve McQueen's life. He died of cardiac arrest less than a day after a high-risk surgery to remove cancerous tumors in 1980, just 3 years after their divorce. His death was a tragedy that cut short his life and any chance of his own recovery. Ali has reflected on the poignant what if, the possibility that he, too, might have found peace and sobriety if he had lived longer. That reflection reinforces the tragedy that consumed 2 lives that could have been so different. Ali MacGraw's final word on the matter today is the definitive one. Her survival, her sobriety, and her recovery gave her the ultimate authority to tell the complete story, balancing the enduring Hollywood myth of the King of Cool with the complicated human truth she lived. The story of Ali MacGraw and Steve McQueen is not a love story. It is a lesson in the price of passion, the pain of control, and the incredible power of finding one's own voice. Having survived the storm, Ali MacGraw's third act is arguably her most important, a masterpiece dedicated to authentic living and purpose. The key to her triumph is the sanctuary of Santa Fe. Her move to New Mexico in the 1990s was a symbolic and literal shedding of her old life. She intentionally chose a place where status and being a celebrity hold absolutely no currency, trading the flashing cameras of Hollywood for the calm dignity of the high desert. Her daily life today is a meaningful rejection of the superficiality she once chased. It is focused on kindness, integrity, and simplicity. She is often described as a bona fide locale who is deeply comfortable in her own skin, embracing her age and wisdom. This life has given her a new definition of beauty, rooted in compassion and purpose. Her continued work with organizations like EBU, a fashion collective supporting female artisans, showcases her dedication to sustainable design and empowering women globally. a powerful, direct contrast to the way she was once disempowered by one dominant man. Ali MacGraw's unconventional legacy proves that her greatest achievement is not her Oscar nomination for Love Story or her blockbuster success in The Getaway. Her real masterpiece is her sobriety, her hard-won self-acceptance, and her willingness to be publicly honest about her trauma. Her survival story is both a cautionary tale and a beacon of hope for women in any dependent or abusive relationship. It is a powerful demonstration that recovery and self-worth are entirely possible, even after experiencing the most significant personal and professional losses. Significantly, her ability to heal is reflected in her relationships today. She has an enduring, positive bond with her son, Josh, and even maintained a mature connection with her second husband, Robert Evans, until his death. This capacity for healthy, loving, and mature relationships was utterly impossible during the years of chaos with McQueen. Her final reflection on the marriage acknowledges its full reality. It was a tragedy, a mistake she profoundly regrets. But it was also the catalyst for her eventual liberation. The horrors she endured were the difficult lessons that ultimately led her to the place of profound peace she enjoys today. At 85, Ali MacGraw stands not as the victim of a famous tragedy, but as a survivor who reclaimed her name, her story, and her spirit. Her life is the quiet, powerful answer to the chaos she once endured. The King of Cool demanded subservience, but Ali MacGraw chose to be free. Have you read Ali MacGraw's autobiography? What are your thoughts on the remarkable courage it must have taken for her to reveal such painful truths so many years later? Let us know in the comments below. If you found this story as fascinating as we did, click on the next video on your screen. And don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's greatest mysteries.